4 gram, only €4. Heinz Baked Bean Snap Pots 200 gram 4-pack, half price now €1.49. And until Sunday, Coors Light 20 bottle box, only €20. Centra. Live every day. Enjoy alcohol sensibly.
You ain't shit! I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
Well, fans can be the harshest critics, you know.
And they often are.
A wife is often the harshest critic of her husband.
I thought I was invincible. That's what you're trained to believe as a sports person.
There was 4 million people in Ireland who knew much more about managing football teams than I did. When it comes to music, I can spoof with the best.
Your sporting career is the best time you'll have, and you know you have to hang on to it for as long as you like, because everything else is pretty crappy.
And this is not lies. Stephen Rothschild has never spoken to Jim McGuinness in his life.
And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5. Just let you know it's Leeds 1, Burnley 0 in the Premier League. Matthias Cleek with the goal at Turf Moor. You can text us on 53106. We're streaming the conversation as well. You can listen to us on News Talk, but also watch us on the social channels for Off the Ball, for Periscope on Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube and on Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app. This is the Saturday panel. We're reviewing the sporting week between now and 2:30 with the former Leinster, Connacht and Ireland hooker and the rugby coach Bernard Jackman, presenter of Off the Bench here and sports writer Cliona Foley, and the Irish Examiner sports journalist Brendan O'Brien. Bernard, Cliona and Brendan, how are you all getting on?
Good, thank you.
I think we'll start with a bit of GAA, given the week that was in it, with the hurling coming back last weekend. Antrim's great win over Clare, Tipperary and Limerick drawing. It's the football this weekend. We got Kerry and Galway today, Tyrone and Donegal. My thinking, Brendan, is that when I'm thinking about the league, look, it's an unprecedented time, and I suppose you can't really complain in any way when you're seeing Gaelic football back live, even though there's no crowds yet. But I'm kind of thinking a knockout championship. I'd love to see teams get a second chance at the championship. Is there much meaning for the likes of Kerry, Donegal, Galway, Dublin? I think it's great for the Division 3 and 4 teams. But how are you feeling? How receptive are you about the Allianz Leagues returning in football this weekend?
Yeah, I'm still trying to get my head around the GA being back, John, to be honest, because when you look at it as well, like the rugby season is kind of sat in its traditional slot. You know, okay, there's been a few changes, but it's there. It's been with us throughout the last 9 months or whatever. Same with the football, by soccer. And, you know, so they've kind of trundled on regardless. We've been 5 months or so without the GA, and to have it coming back when the sun is shining outside and, you know, we're settling into a summer, it's just, I can't get my head around it for some reason. I mean, this time of year, I remember going down to Portlaoise for a Leinster football double-header about 7 or 8 years ago, and the shimmering tarmac and, you know, 15 on 15, and some of the weaker sides would play out some really good football. So the fact that the league is starting, it's kind of hard to get my head around. And, you know, look, we have that cliche every year, John, about, you know, what's the league worth? And I suppose it's a question that's even more relevant this year with the change in formats and everything. You know, it's interesting as well, a lot of the coverage that I'm reading is about Division 3. Obviously, the likes of Cavan and Tipperary who will be trying to get out of the third tier and avoid the Tailteann Cup next year. And then Division 4 as well, with Mickey Hart managing Louth, and McGinley up in Antrim, Tony McEntee in Sligo. It's kind of, the league has turned football on its head. And I suppose that says a lot about where we are at the top of the game as well. I mean, we'll spend the rest of the summer looking at Dublin, and are any of the other 4 or 5 teams behind them capable of chasing them a little bit better this year? Because you look at last year, and once the provincial championships were done and we had the excitement of Cavan and Tipperary winning those brilliant games, it kind of died a death. So yeah, it might be starting off in a kind of a strange way, and let's just hope it doesn't finish that way again.
Cliona, when I'm back in the pub in a couple of months' time, hopefully I'll be able to talk about the meaning of life with my friends and strangers. But the meaning of the leagues, how have you found the Hurling League last weekend, and what are you hoping for when it comes to the Football League over the next few weeks with these North and South divisions rolling into the Championship?
I'm struggling to get my head around it, John, to be honest. Like, you have a division, you have a section of Division 1 football that's basically the Ulster Championship by another name in some ways. It's very strange. What I thought was really noticeable last weekend was just exactly like Brendan was saying, the lovely weather. It looked like it was Championship hurling, but the pace wasn't Championship hurling. So you had that weird thing where, you know, the weather looked like it was the summer, but it was the league, and it's not really the summer. And you're in this kind of, you know, in some ways you could look at this league a bit like the O'Byrne Cup or, those pre-season championships, because really all managers can do in the short space of time they have is get teams ready for the championship and hope they don't get injured. And, I was listening to Niall Moylan this morning talking about, how careful managers and coaches have to be at the moment bringing players back, because they've been doing so much straight line work and now you're back in, multi-movement, multi-angled performance. So you've really got to be careful with them. So it's very strange. But I tell you one thing, it will be, I guarantee you in 2 or 3 weeks' time, Mickey Hart will be talking about, the lack of coverage of Division 4? And that game in the Geraldines today, up in Louth, with himself and a former player, one of his most famous players, on either side of a management. Will they bring more interest? Will they bring more coverage to Division 3 and 4? I hope so. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, Division 4 North, Louth against Enda McGinley's Antrim. Bernard, the meaning of the league for you, are you excited about Gaelic football returning?
Yeah, I think it's just, as both Brendan and Cliona have said, it's the service purpose of getting back. I think it's great for those players to be back to start to play games again and get ready for the championship. But no, I think it's effectively like a pre-season block where you normally play friendlies, and it's just a case of trying to get players fit, trying to implement a style of play, and trying to give, I suppose, players an opportunity to put their hand up for the championship. So that's how I see it this year. More than ever, it's really a glorified set of friendlies to get you ready for the championship a little bit later on. But I think that's understandable.
For Kerry and Galway, it's a big season, Brendan. Kerry so disappointed to be knocked out of the championship, although it was a brilliant spectacle against Cork last year. Galway had a great start to last year, then they just petered out. They'll be hoping to be at the business end come August.
Yeah, I don't know. Was the Kerry-Cork game a great spectacle? It was a great finish. And,
exactly.
Now maybe I'm being unkind.
I just think the knockout nature it maybe made it a great spectacle.
Yeah, and that was a great thing in the knockout championship, wasn't it? I mean, it catered for those kind of occasions. But funnily enough, we're just coming off the back of talking about the league. Who were the league champions last year? It was Kerry. If you remember David Clifford, I've never seen a more muted trophy raising spectacle. I don't think he said a word. I think he might have half lifted it and put the trophy back down on the table and walked off. That was the league.
Didn't Donegal have almost a B team out as well, Brendan? Do you remember for that final as well? They certainly didn't have a full strength team because they were so close to championship for them. Yeah, so I mean, look, I think we were all disappointed that Kerry didn't make it through. As good as that Cork victory in Páirc Uí Chaoimh was last summer, it did kind of deprive us of what we had all been hoping for. I mean, Kerry, from a long way out, they looked like the most likely team to run Dublin close. And the real problem again with the championship last year was Dublin just weren't tested really. It was Tadhg Furlong's first year in charge. There was a lot of pressure on him. He didn't want to be the man who would bring the 5 in a row team to a shuddering halt, and it just didn't happen. And Kerry falling when they fell really deprived us of that. So it'll be interesting to see where Kerry go. I mean, there was a lot of criticism about how they set up against Cork and earlier in the league as well, that they were clearly preparing the ground for facing Dublin later on, and people talking about this wasn't Kerry values, that they weren't being true to themselves, that they needed to back themselves a bit more. So Kerry actually is probably among the leading lights, a very intriguing case study as to how they will go in the next couple of weeks. Galway, like you say, John, I mean, they were like Liverpool really. They didn't recover from the lockdown and they were on free fall thereafter. But they were very impressive under Pádraig Joyce before that. So I don't know. It's kind of hard. I don't see the likes of Galway making such a leap up to Dublin unless Dublin make a significant drop down to the others. I think in terms of teams that can catch them by catching them and not having Dublin come back to them, I think you're still looking at Kerry.
Tyrone and Donegal. Tyrone new management now, of course. Cliona, Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan. Donegal still probably smarting over that Cavan defeat. That'll be an interesting battle today, and a phony war, as they say, ahead of the championship.
Absolutely, but I do think there will be great interest in seeing, that new Tyrone management, because there was such a lobby, there for so long that Mickey Hart had stayed too long. There was such mixed feelings about it in the county. So I do think, and particularly Dooher just was I mean, he was just such a brilliant footballer himself, and his work rate was extraordinary. And I think that, you know, whatever team's going to play for him and whoever they're going to have back, and, you know, they're still waiting for a few big names to come back, their work rate will be back up, I think, like it was, because I just think Duggan is such a driven character. He is going to drive that team back. So, you know, it'll be really interesting to see. But Ulster, you know, you can argue, like, even the way the league has been lined up, like, Ulster is really the only province that has, you know, that really tight, you know, I think a serious provincial competition. So, like, I just love to see the league used to lead into a championship, you know, and I think, you know, I still feel that, you know, we all say the league doesn't matter, and I think at the moment, you know, it really doesn't matter in terms of it's just being used for preparation, but somewhere down the line, I'd like to see them make it matter by making it in some way seed teams or, you know, lead into a championship or link it with the championship or do something. And they are constricting the season now at the inter-county season, so they're making it smaller, they're making it more manageable for players. So why not make, this year's going to be an exception, but in the future, why not make it so that every game matters, if you like?
5-3.
Now you've two leashes on the panel today, which is very unusual. So, you know, we'll be keeping an eye as well.
We can't turn it into a leash discussion, though, unfortunately.
Please don't.
5-3-106. Come on, folks. People forget that Kerry had an extra man for most of the 2019 drawn final against Dublin. Still, they couldn't beat them. Dublin won the replay as well by 6 points when they had 15 men. They also won last year's final by 5 points, says Mick and Cork. It's very simple, Cliona. As you said, in the future, not this year, we've obviously had these extenuating circumstances, but in the future, play the provinces in the spring, is my view, and have a league championship in the summer with Division 3 and 4 teams playing meaningful games with a trophy and a Croke Park final at the end of it. Hurling-wise, Brendan, Antrim were great last weekend, beating Clare. That was getting the Hurling League ignited, and Tipperary and Cork this evening should be fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, Antrim was obviously the standout result, and not just result, but performance last weekend. I mean, the manner in which they beat them last week, John, they fell behind early. I think Clare had the wind up in Belfast, and, you know, Clare, how many times do you see one of the so-called weaker hurling counties lose heart in that situation? But Antrim, I mean, it was highlighted on TV later on, the work rate that they showed, some of the points they scored, that Neil McManus one from his own 45 was ridiculous. Like, so the manner in which they did it was fantastic, and Darren Gleeson is doing a superb job up there. And, you know, I suppose, not to take away from that, but the disappointment is that with the likes of the Antrims and the Westmeads and the Laois, it always seems there's one of them kind of making the step up while the others are kind of standing still or maybe losing ground. And you look at Westmeath and Laois and the trimmings they took last week, very, very disappointing. You know, looking at Laois specifically, the 21 wides or something, and Davy Fitzgerald, what did they win? 4-17 to 10 points, and Davy Fitzgerald could come out and say that wasn't good enough for Wexford. So what you'd love to see is, I don't know how it happens, but just see a greater depth and breadth to these kind of mezzanine counties between the top tier and maybe the second tier. And it just doesn't seem to be happening. And it seems to be dependent on the likes of a Gleeson or, you know, an Eddie Brennan or a Cheddar Plunkett coming in and by sheer force of personality moving the thing on, getting all the players on board at the same time. So I don't know what the answer there, but yeah, Antrim was absolutely fantastic. And I suppose Tip and Limerick was a nice headline act on the first weekend. You know, we talked about the football and how, you know, is it a bit of shadow boxing and all that, but within all this there are little kind of subplots, and the one between Tip and Limerick was neither of them wanted to live or wanted to lose. Limerick want to keep that Indian sign over the likes of Tip, and Tip, having invested so much in getting the lead against Limerick last week, for them to lose, you know, having been outscored, I think they're outscored 5 points to 1 in the end and snatched a draw. But had they lost from that kind of position in the end, it would have been a little bit of a dagger to the ribs coming into the championship. So,
yeah.
Look, I mean, we talked about the time of year with the football coming back as well. For the hurling, it's a godsend. I mean, for these guys to be coming back with the sods the way they are, it's the way hurling's meant to be played.
And Cork tonight started well last weekend, Cliona, 5 goals, 16 years without an All-Ireland. Kieran Kingston will be looking to build momentum now.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting about them last weekend was just, they seem to be playing a slightly different style as well, John, so that's going to be very interesting to see, are they adapting? Have they changed the style of hurling as well a little bit, I think, because, they're one of those teams that, again, need to develop central players. We saw with a couple of teams last week, particularly defensively, just need to sort out players. So that's why I think that this league is just going to be really used. Like last year's season was so broken up for teams that I think the best that they can do really is try and line up their teams for championship. And Cork just, he's made some big calls down there in terms of people he's not picked on the panel. He's got lots of young talent there as well. But I think it's an interesting year for them. But I think Kingston, as a manager, he probably has hurlers. So it is about, getting them in the right places as well. And I was really interested just even in the way he spoke after the match last week, like he always, even when he was in with Jimmy Barry and that, I always felt him, he's just a very measured kind of a man, and I think he might be a good person to be there at the moment.
Bernard, Tadhg Furlong this week, a 1-year deal, 28 years of age. I kind of think to myself, more power to him. Wait and see what the situation is in a year's time. I'm sure he'll be in similar form. Hopefully he'll be injury free. It's all about knowing your value in life. I don't know how long you get at the top as a rugby player, and Tadhg Furlong knows his value, and he's just waiting to see what happens in a year's time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think both parties deserve credit. I think the RFU were able to get a deal done in obviously what's very difficult circumstances. Obviously it wasn't lucrative enough, or Tadhg has other ambitions. He didn't want to tie himself down for longer than a year. But the main priority was that he was available for Leinster and Ireland for the next 12 months. And I think, he's at a peak of his powers now. This contract, or the one he signs next, should be the most lucrative of his career unless the market changes and salaries go up. So I think, obviously, with the current climate, it was difficult to get that 3-year, 4-year, or 3-year contract probably that, sort yourself out financially. So rather than actually take something that wasn't optimum, back yourself to play well. We saw him in the Six Nations. He was bang on form. He's the front runner to be first choice title for the British and Irish Lions. And yeah, in a year's time, the RFU might have more security and clarity around what their revenue streams are like, and be able to give him the contract that he wants. Or if he wants to potentially go and have a stint somewhere else, well, then he's free to do that. So I have no issue with it. I know some people were worried about it and trying to read too much into it, but for me, when you look at what's happening, the RFU have managed to keep all their frontline players on central contracts, which is I suppose satisfying and gives us a bit of security and stability.
But Tadhg Furlong, say if he did leave and move to France next year, a year out from World Cup, we couldn't have him not in the sphere or in the picture. So Bernard, it kind of then would put the RFU into a big quandary, because we had this, Johnny Sexton aside, this unwritten rule, and as Simon Zebo experienced, that if you're not here, you're not involved.
Yeah, I actually don't think there's an issue with that. I wouldn't be against them relaxing that rule. You have to understand that the 4 Irish, particularly the 3 Irish provinces, and Connacht obviously don't have as big a budget as the other 3. They have budgets that compare very favourably with the top teams in England and most of the teams in France. And obviously there's a tax break to be a professional rugby player here. Plus, you're more likely to play for Ireland if you play in Ireland. And there's obviously a strong identity with the provinces that the players play for. So I don't think there'll be a mass exodus of players at all. But what I think it could do is, it could, obviously ideally you keep your top end players there. But if you can't afford them, or they really want to have that experience abroad, and of their 14-year career, they want to spend 2 or 3 years away, like Johnny spent 2 away, then allow them to do that. The New Zealanders don't hamper their chances of winning World Cups by saying between World Cups players can't leave or take career breaks, etc. They're flexible in that, and we seem to have one rule which is obviously very strict, which, to be honest, isn't actually helping us get where we want to get. If you look at what the key objectives are from an RFU point of view, it's to get to at least a semi-final in a World Cup, to be in the top 3 in the world, to win European Cups regularly, and we're slipping away on all those, or we're not achieving those, particularly the World Cup one. and we have a rule that keeps all the players in Ireland. So I don't think there's a big issue with it, and it's something I think will come to a head probably this time next year. If it's not for Tadhg Furlong, it could be for someone else, someone who wants to go away but still play for Ireland. And and as I said, I think that rule, it was fine at the time it was brought in, but it's not leading us to where we want to get to. So it should be up for discussion.
Yeah, John, I was always curious about it. I don't know that it is even a rule, is it, Bernard? Like, Schmidt was very strong on it. You could break it for Sexton, but not for anybody else. So how is that a rule? And I was always confused about why it was there. It was there to stop players getting poached by people with lots of money. That's how I understood it. But then also it was there, I think it was argued fairly at the time that it was there also to make sure the players didn't get overplayed maybe in some other leagues. But it doesn't make sense to me. And for example, now I can't see, it's just, he's such a quintessential Irish person, everything about him. Maybe you'd see different, Bernard, when, you know, from your time in France, maybe you could see a team in France you'd want to go to. But I couldn't, I don't understand why that rule is there, and I think it goes against the grain. I think, look at Tadhg Byrne, he's a classic example. Let's pick players. It doesn't matter where they're playing. Okay, we got to take a break. Cliona, Foley, Bernard Jackman and Brendan O'Brien on the Saturday panel reviewing the week. If you want to get in touch or any questions for our panel, you can text us on 53106. Don't go away. We're back after the news here on Off the Ball Saturday.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
I'm the Thompsons' telly. Before their daughter was born, we did movie marathons and series sprints like every weekend. Now they spend more time watching her than me. They see cuteness, I see tantrums. This morning, while I played her cartoons, she threw a rattle at me, like totally unprovoked. Mr. Thompson called FBD's insurance team. They'll get a clear picture of what went down, then cover damage to me, his TV. After all, support is what FBD do. Entertainment equipment covered up to €2,000 under standard owner-occupied home policy. No claims bonus will be affected by claim. Policy T's and C's apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Before we had Halo Care, Mum fell going up the stairs and she lay there till her carer found her the next morning. It was devastating. But now, with Halo Care's smart sensors installed, they know immediately if something happens, like if she falls, leaves the front door open or forgets to take her medication. She's happy. She can live her normal life in her own home, and we know the specialists in the Halo Care Hub are looking out for her 24/7. Halo Care empowers loved ones to live safer, healthier and more connected lives through supportive technology. Find out more at halocaregroup.com.
This is Now. Stream world-class entertainment like Academy Award-winning Promising Young Woman starring Carey Mulligan.
If I hear that one more time.
Tenet, Christopher Nolan's mind-bending blockbuster.
I need some idea of the threat you face.
And brand new detective drama Mayor of Easttown starring Kate Winslet.
I'm investigating a murder.
Join now and start your 7-day free trial. 18 plus, new customers only. Membership sold separately and auto-renew. Terms apply.
Drive into your future with Audi's range of attractive finance offers on models such as the Audi A6 Saloon, the fully electric Audi e-tron, or the plug-in hybrid Audi A3. Power your Audi your way with petrol, diesel, hybrid and fully electric vehicles available. Contact your local authorised Audi dealer today to arrange an appointment or to find out more. Future is an attitude. Future is an Audi.
There's an iPhone just for you at 3. Experience amazing performance and get the new iPhone 12 mini or the iPhone 11, now for just €99. That's with all-you-can-eat data from only €45 a month. Connect today with 99% nationwide coverage on Ireland's fastest mobile network. Switch now at 3.ie. 24-month minimum term and direct debit required. Ookla analysis of speed test intelligence data. See speedtest.net/awards/3.
At AIB, we're the first Irish bank to pledge to operate as carbon neutral by 2030. So we're doing less of the things that damage and drain the environment and more of the things that don't. Like partnering with Food Cloud, where so far our support has helped redistribute over 15 million meals, avoiding 20,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions caused by food waste. Find out more by searching AIB Sustainability. AIB, we pledge to do more. Information sourced from Food Cloud. Adult Irish Banks plc is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
We are happy to announce that Click and Collect is back at Dunnes Stores. This free and super convenient service means you can now order your favourite fashion and homewares online and collect at your local Dunnes stores. Visit dunnstores.com today. Dunnes Stores, always better value. Terms and conditions apply.
From Monday, May 17th, we continue to build our recovery with the reopening of all remaining retail. Ireland's vaccination programme is making good progress, with more than 2 million doses now administered. As our vaccination programme rolls out and we plan for our summer, we still need to control the spread of the virus. So it's really important that we continue to follow public health guidance. Work from home, meet outdoors, shop safely by wearing a mask even if vaccinated, keep a safe distance from others, and avoid crowds. Let's keep working together and keep moving forward. Find out all of the details at gov.ie/COVID-19. Supported by the Government of Ireland.
Looking to upgrade your technology to study or work from home? Get the most out of remote working with Harvey Norman. We have all the biggest brands and latest technology in stock today, with laptops from just €299, tablets from only €69, SIM-free smartphones from €89. And get what you really want today with Tech Credit, flexible payment options. Harvey Norman, your technology specialists.
Fees, terms and conditions and minimum credit criteria apply. Subject to credit assessment and approval. Finance provided by Flexify Europe Limited. See harveynorman.ie/tech credit.
On radio, on the News Talk app powered by Go Loud and smart speaker. Play News Talk.
Across Ireland. This is the IMRO Radio Awards National Station of the Year. This is News Talk.
It's 2 o'clock. I'm Stephen Murphy. The HSE says it's making progress as it attempts to rebuild its IT systems impacted by yesterday's cyber attack. It could mean thousands of appointments and procedures getting cancelled next week if they aren't operating again soon. The HSE says the rebuild will be a slow and methodical process. COVID vaccinations are continuing, but there are delays to the testing and tracing programme. Chair of the Irish Medical Organisation's GP Committee, Dr. Dennis McCauley, says the attack is causing problems.
It's very much our interface with the hospital that is being affected. Naturally, during the COVID crisis, the important issues such as referring for COVID testing, even referring to the COVID hub, which in Donegal is unfortunately still quite busy, is affected.
The Foreign Affairs Minister says Israel is not meeting its legal obligation to protect children in conflict. Simon Coveney says it's not acceptable that 32 children have been killed in Gaza this week by Israeli fire. The Israeli military says it's targeted Hamas facilities, while Palestinians have fired rockets back. Sky's Mark Stone is in Jerusalem with the latest.
The latest tragic story is a family, all of whom died with the exception of the father and a very young baby, the two survivors of a large family. They were buried today. That was the consequence of an airstrike that hit a refugee camp in Gaza.
A man has been arrested in connection with 2 suspected arson incidents in Limerick. Gardaí were alerted to a car on fire at Browns Quay at around 1:30 yesterday morning. They received reports a number of hours later of a fire at a nearby business with significant damage caused. A man in his 40s was arrested in Limerick this morning and is being questioned at Mayorstone Park Garda Station. And Portugal has announced it'll admit tourists from most European countries from Monday. Travellers from countries with virus rates below 500 cases per 100,000 can visit, including for non-essential reasons. It's 2 minutes past 2.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Track and solve your customer service queries online and on your Ryanair app.
Heavy showers in the west and southwest will spread to most areas later. A few sunny spells in parts and highest temperatures 11 to 15 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
And this is Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5. You can text us 53106. You can tweet us at Off the Ball. Leeds 2, Burnley 0 in the Premier League. Just watching it here, 74 minutes on the watch at Turf Moor. Matthias Cleek and Jack Harrison with the goals for Leeds. And we're getting prepped as well for our OTB Sports UEFA Champions League final preview show with Pepsi Max coming your way from May the 27th. We'll have Teddy Sheringham and Denise O'Sullivan on the show and more guests to be confirmed. So head over to otbsports.com/events to get your virtual tickets now. And Pepsi Max, maximum taste, no sugar, for the love of it. So we're back with the Saturday panel. We're reviewing the sporting week just gone with the former Leinster, Connacht and Ireland hooker and rugby coach Bernard Jackman, presenter of Off the Bench and sports writer Cliona Foley, and the Irish Examiner sports journalist Brendan O'Brien. You can listen to us on News Talk and watch us on the social channel as well, for Periscope on Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. I want to talk about Rory McIlroy. The PGA Championship starts this Thursday at Kiawah Island in South Carolina. He won there a major back in 2012. He won the PGA, the Wanamaker Trophy back then, but he hasn't won a major, Rory McIlroy, in 7 years. He won last week the Wells Fargo Championship, his first victory on the tour since November of 2019. Great win. He's now got a new coach. As well as Michael Bannon, he's got Pete Cowan coaching him, Rory McIlroy. He's got Bob Rotella, a mental mind guru as well, who's worked with some brilliant major champions because of his brilliance itself. I think Rory now is working with the right people. Any new people he's working with are now the right people to be working with. And Bernard Jackman, it's great to see such a brilliant Irish athlete back in the winners' enclosure.
Yeah, it's been a long time, 553 days. I don't watch a huge amount of golf, but when I saw he was in contention, I was glued to it, and I thought he showed such composure. And ironically, the part of his game that's usually very strong, which is hitting fairways, was disastrous. I think he only hit 19 fairways all week, which is the fewest by a PGA winner in 33 years. So it was the other parts of his game, and I think his new coach Pete Cowan was saying, look, I haven't fixed him yet, and it was actually his mental edge and his caddy, deserve huge credit. Harry Diamond, obviously, who was getting a lot of criticism. Obviously, this period hasn't been as successful as it was with his predecessor JP Fitzgerald, but I think just when it came to it in the 18th, how he convinced Rory to take the drop penalty. It's going to be a huge moment for their relationship as well, and just confirms that he has the ability under pressure to help Rory get over the line. So hopefully, it's the start of a resurgence, and because I think it's been a long time, and the game has probably missed him a little bit, being at the top end of it.
He does have the X factor, Brendan. Is he the biggest Irish sports star in the world? We saw Conor McGregor this week with $180 million earned, a lot of that based around entertainment, but Forbes magazine published that more so than Messi, Ronaldo, Roger Federer.
He's certainly, I suppose, the biggest active sports person. You couldn't call Conor McGregor active in anything but a social media manner. Yeah, definitely he is. Like, you look at what he's won, even though, like you say, John, it's 7 years since his last major. I just find some of the reaction to his win on Sunday very, very interesting. I was watching it in Sky Sports, and I don't know what feed they have. I think it's one of the American stations that they picked it up on. But one of the commentators, as he was making the walk from the 18th to the scoring hut, said, this makes Rory the favourite for Valhalla. And I just thought, obviously it's straight after the win and all that, and there's a little bit of adrenaline going in the commentary box. But I thought it was very interesting, and just some of the things that I looked at during the week. This is his 15th title since he won his last major in 2014. So he's been here before. He's won plenty of titles, but it's never been enough to make him step up. There's also the point of view, as Bernard mentioned, there's a lot of talk about Harry Diamond and is this the start of something else? This was his 6th win with Harry Diamond on the bag. So when you put it in those terms, this isn't a bright new dawn. It's continuation of what we've seen before, and it still leaves unquestioned. Can he do it at the majors? Because the way he won in Quail Hollow last weekend is not how you're going to win a major championship. There's also the field as well, and I'm not disparaging any of the golfers who are in and around the leaderboard, because they're exceptional golfers. But Abraham Answer, Keith Mitchell, Victor Hovland, exceptional golfers, but to use a Fergieism, they're not top golfers. So it's going to be a very different challenge as well, And other things struck me as well. I mean, he's changed his grips, he's changed his irons, he's changed his putter. He's talked, even the way he's putting, you can see he's not going through all the routines. He's getting up and playing a bit more golf, rather than overthinking things. And had he not won on Sunday, had that ball gone into the creek, had Harry Diamond not said what he said to him, and Rory done a bit of a Jean van de Velde or something, would we be looking at everything he's done now and saying he's literally throwing darts at a dartboard and waiting for one to hit a bullseye? So it's very, very, we all know it's thin lines between a pat in the back and a kick in the arse. So I think it's brilliant that he's come back. I'm not playing it down at all. The mental fortitude that he showed was superb. And even before 18, you look at those bunker shots that he played in 14 and 15. Nobody's talking about them, and they were exceptional. Absolutely exceptional shots. So you'd hope that, as people are saying, this has answered questions over his hunger, over his mental fortitude, as Bernard said, over the relationship with himself and Harry Diamond. But I just remain to be convinced that this is the start of the next chapter of Rory's career, and we're going to see him start to win another couple of majors, starting with the PGA next week.
Rodrigo scored twice in quick succession for Leeds, who lead Burnley now by 4-0 in the Premier League, finishing the season well. Bielsa's side in the Premier League, they're going to be a little bit better than mid-table. What constitutes success for Rory McIlroy going forward, Cliona, in the next few years? Does he need to get that major tally up and running? Like, he seems a happy man. His wife and daughter there last week, which is great to see. For me, he still has that artistry. He still has that natural verve and vim and talent when he's on song, the swagger that you could feel that. I really think he's going into this week with a favourites chance. I think he's now working with the right people. The new people are the right people. Bob Bertella has had countless major champions go through his mind school, as it were. Padraig Harrington being one of them.
But swing is such a vital thing, John, isn't it? In a sport like golf, like it's their starting point, and he was so wild again, like still a bit wild off the tee last week, and that's the worry. And I think that swing is such a central thing, and he's changed so much that I am very much with Brendan on this as well. That in a top class tournament, in one of the majors. When the pressure's really on and all of the top guys are around you, that's a very different thing than what he won last week. And when he won the PGA, I think was it 8 or 9 years ago, he won it by 8 shots. Like he was that far ahead of the field. The world of golf has changed. All these young guys have come up behind him. What was lovely to see was that thing that you say. Like, he's a confidence player. He definitely has that bounce. And when things don't go well, he's one of those players you see his shoulders drop straight away. He just can't hide it. And I don't know whether he's, I've always felt that he really needs to work more on his mental game as well. But it's interesting that he's worked so much physically on his game. But look, it was lovely to see him back. But I'd reiterate a lot. I think Brendan's right. I think let's not get carried away here.
I think he's got a big chance next week, I have to say. I think he's back. I do, but maybe I've said that before. Rory McIlroy.
John, you know a lot more about it than I do.
Well, I don't know about that. But Rory McIlroy, I don't know if he's going to turn up in Tokyo. I was thinking, it was Rory and Shane Lowry were going to be the Irish competitors at the Tokyo Olympics. I haven't heard much talk about that recently, whether they will go. But at the moment, Team Ireland are going. It is going ahead, it seems. I think it's mad in ways, Bernard Jackman. The Japanese don't want it. Like most of their, that countless surveys, their people don't want it. They've had less than 3% of the country vaccinated. I know the athletes, a lot of them are going to be vaccinated, including our own, going over there. But it seems like they're hurtling towards a situation where they don't want to lose face. And they've also put billions in a sinkhole of cost into this thing. Do you think it should go ahead?
Look, I don't think it should go ahead. I think, as you said, only 3% have been vaccinated. 70% of the population don't want it. There's, I think, 9 prefectures are now in a state of emergency with the 4th wave. They have less hospital beds per capita than most Western countries. And the Union of Doctors have come out this week and stressed to the government they don't think it should go to a head. But the contract is quite particular with the Olympics. The contract is the only people who can cancel this is the IOC. So there's huge pressure. There's obviously the onus is on the IOC, but in their charter, I think it's if the safety of the athletes is in question, they need to make that call. But from a Japanese point of view as well, obviously there's 70% of the population against it, and high profile athletes like the tennis player Naomi Osaka has come out and said she doesn't think it should go ahead. But there's also that other element of the population who see it being very important from an economic point of view. So the Japanese economy has been stagnating. They're obviously coming back from the nuclear disaster and a couple of other natural disasters. And some people in Japan see it as being a way to kick off a new era of in Japanese economy and pride in the society, etc. So it's a fine balance. But I think the problem is it's with the IOC, and when Japan, any country that takes on the right to have the Olympics, gives away the right to cancel it, goes back to them. So Thomas Bach, the head of the IOC, was supposed to go to Japan over the last couple of weeks, but he's cancelled due to the numbers. I mean, it's looking more and more doubtful, and it's only ever been cancelled 3 times, all during World War periods. So I think it's hanging on by the skin of its teeth at the moment, and I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of May, I think they have to, by the end of May, at the moment they're working towards a 50% capacity, and they need to start refunding tickets, etc. So I would be surprised if by the end of May it's not called either way, and I would say it's probably more unlikely than likely at the moment.
Yeah, dozens of Japanese towns have now abandoned players to host athletes. Cliona, it's an unprecedented situation over there. Obviously, one thing people haven't spoken about is the heat as well. The heat will be oppressive in July and August. But are you uneasy about this Olympic Games potentially going ahead? Because Japan can step in. They can step in. But they don't want to. That's the thing. They don't want to lose face.
No, and also of the 3 that were cancelled, they were all caused by wars, and Tokyo in 1940 was one of them, and I think that's the thing with them as well too. But let's be honest, so much of it is about money. I'll be honest, put my hand up. First of all, I'm meant to be going. I'm meant to be working at the Paralympics, so I'm due to go to Japan if it comes off. Whether it should come off or not, I have very mixed feelings on it. For the athletes, I really feel I'd love it to come off for them. And yet I know as well that there's been so much inequity even in the qualifying, John. Do you know what I mean? We still have athletes chasing qualifications so late in the year, and some of them will be chasing it right up. And that makes it very hard for them to compete against people maybe who got qualification last year. Like the whole system, there's a Canadian boxer actually suing, a female boxer suing the the International Committee because one of her qualifying tournaments, the one in the Americas, was just cancelled. And this is what's happening to athletes all the time. So how they're staying focused, I don't know. They really do. I'm a big Olympic fan. I know people aren't. It was one of the reasons I fell in love with sport many years ago. I do think it's a unique event. It's a showcase for sports that don't get a showcase. And particularly in the past when TV coverage wasn't like it was now. It was the time that you got to see athletes in other sports, and that's when I fell in love with lots of different sports. And I think it has that ability still to inspire people. But certainly you'd worry about the fact that so few of the Japanese have been vaccinated at this stage, only 3 to 5%. They've lost 12,000 people to this virus. They have serious health concerns and a right to have them. Now, I think the fact that the athletes are now getting free vaccines from Pfizer, that at least when you feel they're not taking those from the rest of society, all our normal vaccination things are going, this is a special once-off. That will help, but it's not going to be the same, John. Anybody who's ever worked at Olympics knows the thing about the Olympics that's lovely for everybody involved is just that feeling of kinship. The volunteers are amazing. The athletes stop and talk to people, that they might, some of them that are so, high-powered and so away from normal life, if you like. All of that is there. So I have reservations about it going ahead, but I think somebody's going to have to make, like Bernard said, a hard decision very soon, because there's just it's come to a point now where it's just either go or don't.
I was in Rio, and the empty stadiums for the 100 metres half empty for the 100 metres final. They priced the locals out of it. It was a circus that came into town. They dropped it in the middle of Rio, and they didn't care about the natives. They could have had people like impoverished people. Give them a bit of...
every Olympics now is like, in fact, the Paralympics are much more democratic. I was in Rio for the Paralympics, and the locals, there were much better crowds because they could afford the tickets. The tickets were $1 each. So there's a load of questions you ask, and I'm sure Brendan would feel the same, that the Olympics is a circus, and there's a lot wrong with it now. But I still think that there's a lot right with it as well.
I think this is showing, though, how wrong it is. Brandon, isn't it? This determination from the IOC to get this done when the Japanese don't want it.
Yeah, and it was interesting during the week, the Japanese Prime Minister, as Bernard said, pointed out that it's up to the IOC, but that I think the quote was something like, the Olympics won't come first. And, all the talk about what the IOC might do or the local organising committee, it may be that if cases just continue going the way they're going, that the decision will be made for them. that they'll have no say in the matter. It'll just be a fait accompli. I don't know how likely that is to happen. I don't know enough about, the rates in Japan or whatever. As Bernard said, their beds per capita is not what the rest of the first world would have. I think a lot of it is, dependent then. I mean, I don't know, was it Bernard or Cliona said it, what sort of crowds are we going to have? I mean, that will go a long way towards swinging some sort of public opinion as well. And as well as that, like the Olympics is, as we know, an enormous undertaking. You're talking like 14,000 athletes alone, and then, support staff, everything else. It's a huge influx into a country at a time when they're not letting people in. But you have to say as well that sports teams are among the safest bubbles out there. I mean, we've seen in Irish rugby in particular that, they are safe environments. Leinster had to come back from La Rochelle, and they were housed in a hotel in Stillorgan, and yet they didn't see anybody really from leaving Dublin and arriving back in Dublin. Yeah, 14,000 athletes is a difference, but my worry would be, going back to Rio again, somebody like the Ryan Lochte affair, remember, with the petrol station and the controversy around that. If just one of those happens or two of those happens, that creates an enormous stink, and things will get out of hand. So I'm the same as Cliona. I'm accredited for the Olympics. I don't know if I'm going yet. People have to press the button on whether to go, and we're all just hanging around waiting to see. I've mixed views on it as well, but you can't get away from the sense that, if there's such a depth of public feeling against it, that it is hard to justify it on that level. Petition gone in this week, 350,000 online signatures calling for it to be called off. But I think the next couple of weeks, in terms of COVID numbers, I think we'll make a decision one way or another.
I was reading a piece from Derval
and in
O'Rourke.
fairness, John. Go on, John.
Sorry, I was reading a piece of Cliona from Derval O'Rourke in the Irish Independent as well about our prospects, if it does happen, that we don't have an industry to support track and field in this country and comparable to other sports. And it was a really good point. We had Sonia O'Sullivan and John Tracy on the show last week speaking about marathon running, 2 Olympic medal winners. To me, we're galaxies away from having athletes that will win track and field medals at the Olympic Games. Are we?
Yeah, but to me, that's not what the Olympics is about. It's not about winning medals. We saw London 2012 where, England, the Brits had, won lots of medals. And afterwards, there was tons of, there still is ongoing, looks at, the way some of their sports are being run and how well they're being, what the sort of management of their sports are and how well they're treating athletes. I don't think the Olympics is about winning medals. We're a very small country. We have exceptional rowers at the moment. That's one thing we know. We are absolutely, if our rowers get there, they will win medals because they are the top of the world. And we have some in Lucerne this weekend trying to qualify to join them. But, in some ways, to me, it's about, it is about an ideal, I think, John, and there's always this big debate afterwards, how many medals did we win, and I often used to say, and London 2012 is a great example, I said, sometimes I think, don't be looking for the medals, look for performances and look for things that make you proud or make your kids want to take up a sport. I think that's more important than medals.
Just on Sport Ireland, Bernard, a report this week saying participation has declined in 2021. Obviously it would because we haven't been able to do anything, but walking remains high. Have you found yourself walking more recently during the pandemic? How have you managed to keep fit?
All my career, I wouldn't even walk to the shop, but I'm kind of all duck or no dinner. So I bought a Fitbit and I was out doing a good bit of walking. I've slipped off the last couple of weeks. But yeah, look, I think it's been... it's obviously been on a few things we could do, and I like trying to catch up on podcasts. I used to catch up on podcasts when I was travelling, but obviously I'm not travelling anywhere. So I did increase it a little bit, and yeah, it's probably one of the only positives out of the whole thing was I think a lot more people are getting out and getting some some low resistance exercise and getting a bit healthier.
Brandon, are you a walker?
I am actually. Well, I was up to recently, but I'm actually sitting here with a hot water bottle on my hip groin area because I have an old 30-year-old injury that's flared up again. So I'm kind of breaking down a little bit. But normally I would be. Yeah, I found through the lockdowns very up and down going through. We got a dog recently as well. Maybe that's why I'm suffering. I was out walking that little guy 3 times a day. But yeah, I found during the lockdowns very, very up and down in terms of a good spurt of maybe 6 weeks or 3 months, and then 2 months of eating chocolate biscuits. So pretty much like everybody else out there.
What types of chocolate biscuits, Brendan?
I'm a digestive man. I'm old school in a lot of ways.
Are you a digestive person, Cliona?
Well, I'm going to see Brendan's hot water injury, and I'm going to wave my crutches at you because I've got a broken ankle at the moment. And actually, I took up cycling. Cycling was the thing that I ended up going to during lockdown, and I absolutely loved it. And I was flying, and I got injured recently, and it was nothing to do with the bike. It was actually stepping off a footpath, so that was completely freakish. So I've decided that walking is more dangerous than being on the bike. But I do see lots of people out, John. I do think the one good thing about lockdown is that it's made us all appreciate our public spaces, the beauty of the country, the opportunities to get out in it. There's a whole new greenway run up the middle of the country now through Kildare and Longford. I think there is a new appreciation of that, and those results made sense to me this week. And Sport Ireland have been involved in bringing out some really good little booklets with some of the papers in the last few weeks. There's one out today, an Irish Trails one. It's actually on cycling trails. So I think we've all come to appreciate the simple things in life, and we just sit and admire the elite athletes from afar. I suppose it must be something to do with the age I am as well, I think.
Bernard, will you watch the FA Cup final today? Have you any interest in it?
No, I used to be really into it, but I've completely lost any kind of attachment to it, unfortunately, which it shows how far it's dropped down the pecking order of this, the must watch sporting events. And I didn't even know until I looked at the itinerary for this that it was even on today. So I think it's a competition that's lost a huge amount of value. Look, I'm sure whoever wins it today will be celebrating, but I just think it's lost its allure.
It's sad, isn't it, Brendan?
It is sad, and I'd be very much of the same persuasion as Bernard there, that in normal years this just wouldn't float my boat at all. But I actually find this year I'm going to make a point of sitting down to it. And the reason is Leicester City, because the FA Cup I found, I think in the last 30 years, the top five, I refuse to say the top six, and it includes Tottenham Hotspur. So the top five teams have absolutely dominated in something like all but 3 of the last 32 seasons or whatever. And the problem is, if they come up against a Crystal Palace or a Burnley, that's a great romantic story until they take the pitch and they get absolutely battered. But the thing about Leicester City is they're third in the league. They've proven themselves in recent years. There's a hint, I don't expect them to win today, but there's a hint that they could actually do something today. And there's enough of an underdog feel about them to kind of have you rooting for them as well. So they've kind of hit that sweet spot for me to kind of, wouldn't it be great to see Leicester win? And there's actually maybe some chance that they can do it. So, but apart from that, I couldn't tell you. I know Arsenal won it last year. I forget who they beat. It's the old story. Maybe it's nostalgia getting the better of us again. But I'll be sitting down watching today with some interest, maybe only for half an hour, until my expectations are swept away again.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the people like Thomas Tuchel and Brendan Rodgers, Cliona, than the actual game.
Yeah, and look, we said it before here, the cult of the manager, I think, is part of that as well. It's so much of football coverage now is about the managers, I find. It's about the psychology of the managers and tactics of the managers. Look, it is. I used to be really romantic about the FA Cup and I always loved it, but look, money has, destroyed football in some ways, I think now. So I'd be far more interested. I'll watch the Women's Champions League final tomorrow evening. Barcelona against Chelsea. I really like to see that one tomorrow.
We saw ladies' football match day travel expenses covered now for the National League. About time, Cliona.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what the parameters of it are. Yeah. Is it just because I think it's because we're in this lockdown, isn't it, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was where they were introduced last year for the championship as well. The basics was the players are going to have to travel separately to matches, so therefore we'll give them. You would like to see it like the WGPA before they amalgamated. Brought out those statistics last year. 93% of female intercounty players don't get any expenses. So, at some stage that has to be some improvement has to be made in some way to that, whether it's through sponsors or whether it's through amalgamations or, you know, whatever it is. It isn't fair. That's the one thing to say about it. So it's good to see it, but the only reason it's in at the moment is because of lockdown, and that isn't going to stay there permanently. But one good thing is that they are going to get the same grants that the government is giving to the male players, and I think that's something that is inarguable, really, if it's coming from government.
Bernard, you were at Munster and Connacht last night.
Yeah, amazing win for Connacht, obviously on the back of a very difficult match against Leinster the week before, but I just thought they just took their opportunities really well, showed massive resilience, got in amongst Munster, and yeah, it was a great win for them. And I played with two of their coaches, Nigel Carroll and Jimmy Duffy, who are moving on next month when the season ends, and for both of those to finish a season in which they beat Munster away, Ulster away and Leinster away, which I don't think they've ever done before. It's a nice way to go out, but also for this young Connacht team, it's been an up and down season, and I think they'll get a huge amount of belief out of that. For Munster, it's a bit of a disaster because yesterday it was announced that there's more than likely going to be a Rainbow Cup final, which will be the top of the Northern Hemisphere teams against the top South African team in a one-off final, and Munster were looking to be hot favourites to do that because it's only 5 games and they've beaten Leinster away, so had got a bonus point against Ulster. But now it's opened it up massively to the likes of Leinster and Treviso to get back into it. So that could be a big blow to them. But a great game and went right down to the death.
I was watching Sky yesterday and they had the revised line schedule coming out. Bernard, they're going to stay in either Cape Town or Pretoria or Johannesburg, and they're going to stay in limited areas. Now the dust has settled, a week on, what's your view of what Warren Gatland did in terms of picking a squad?
Look, I think there's a lot of people out. There's a lot of outrage in Ireland, but I think it's probably fair enough. I think obviously James Ryan and Gary Ringrose, 6 months ago would have been in everybody's squad. Probably unlucky with injuries and a little bit of form, and then we got 2 bolters for me, Bundy Aki and Jack Conan. Not saying they shouldn't be in, but they were surprises. So I think it's a decent squad, a couple of typical Gatland wildcards. But I think when you nail that down to the first choice 15, and I'm just watching I've been watching some of the South African rugby has restarted, obviously with the Southern Rainbow Cup. It's going to be difficult for Rassie Erasmus to get that group together, having played so little rugby. So I think it's a squad that's good enough to go down there and win a series.
It's a bit like England when they didn't have the Saracens contingent that came into the Six Nations undercooked. Can you see similar situation with South Africa that they'll be undercooked here and at a complete disadvantage?
Yeah, and also you're going to have like 2 extremes. You're going to have the guys who come back from the Northern Hemisphere. So they have players who play in Europe, and they're going to be at the end of a long season. And then, I just watched some of the Lion Stormers a little bit earlier, and yeah, they look in really poor shape. Now they haven't played for a year, so it's difficult, but it's going to be a big race for him to try and get those guys in. And if you think of our players, the 4 Nations players, they played Champions Cup, 6 Nations, the end of the Autumn Cup. They've played a lot of top end rugby, so they definitely should be better prepped than South Africa, which is unusual. But we have to make it count.
Well, Bernard Jackman, Cliona, Foley, Brendan O'Brien, we got to leave it there. Thanks so much for your insight and wisdom as always on the Saturday panel. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Cheers, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, the Saturday panel, which you can get out on podcast if you missed any of it later on. Burnley have been hammered by Leeds 4-0 in the Premier League. We'll get a full-time report on that after this break.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball. Show Me the Science with Professor Luke O'Neill.
A News Talk original podcast series focusing on different issues, from the serious to the silly, all explained through science.